afternoon. Thank you. I'm David Ferriero. I'm the Archivist of the United States, and it's a great pleasure to welcome you to my house this afternoon and to welcome you to the William G. McGowan Theater for today's panel discussion, Are You In? Citizen Archivists, Crowdsourcing, and Open Government. Are You In comes from a blog of the Archivist of the United States about transformation. So it's a great honor for me to be introducing this panel. I also want to extend a welcome to today's panel, Matt Knudsen, a colleague from the New York Public Library, Map Division, Darla Adams from Ancestry.com's World Archives Project, Jessica Zelt from the U.S. Geological Survey, Patuxent Wildlife Center. The ways we think about information and information sharing have changed significantly in recent years. The amount of material available in digital form has risen exponentially, and it's easy to become overwhelmed by the volume. In the past, research institutions would have their staff catalog, describe, preserve, and display their papers, photographs, and artifacts. Today, both the volume of material and budgetary constraints force us to look at new ways to make our holdings accessible to the public. A key resource for meeting this challenge is you, the interested public. My career in libraries has convinced me that we learn so much more about our collections when someone makes use of materials and helps us better understand and then describe what we have. In the digital environment, this type of collaboration is even more important. In December 2009, the President issued his Open Government Directive and urged federal agencies to transform the way government does business. Open government is not just putting a window on the workings of government. It relies on participation and collaboration among citizens and public servants. New and evolving information technology is providing increased and more convenient access to government records, opening up exciting possibilities for sharing information and delivering services. At the National Archives, some examples of citizen archivists are the members of the Civil War Conservation Corps, volunteers who prepare pension files for digitization, the software developers who collaborated to help create Federal Register 2.0, we call them Three Guys in a Garage in California, a researcher named Jonathan Dice, who discovered a Revolutionary War Soldiers Journal in the records of the US Senate, and just yesterday discovered 3 more wonderful documents in those same files. And Ken Price, a faculty member at the University of Nebraska, who recognized more than 3,000 documents in the post-Civil War Attorney General's records in Walt Whitman's hand. Here and elsewhere, dedicated and motivated people like these will continue to bring hidden treasures to light. Our moderator today is Meredith Stewart from the Digital Strategies and Services Office of the National Archives. She began her federal career 3 years ago in the Information Security Oversight Office and now works on open government and citizen engagement initiatives. Meredith previously served as a Peace Corps volunteer in Samoa, working on strengthening the capacity of NGOs, and also served a year as an AmeriCorps Vista volunteer at the National Coalition for the Homeless. Ladies and gentlemen, I now turn you over to Meredith Stewart.
Thank you for joining us today for an exciting conversation about how technology is creating new ways for citizens to participate in crowdsourcing and micro-volunteering projects. At the National Archives, we're always trying to think of new ways to make our historical records more accessible to the public. We have about 130 million records online, but that's only a small fraction of the 10 billion records we have. It's clear we've got to get creative. We've got to leverage new technology in order to make more records accessible, online where people want them. We're looking for ways to encourage participation, an important element of our open government plan. We're also seeking of ways of promoting the work of the citizen archivists, volunteers, and researchers who work with our records every day. Today, technology is making things easier. You can participate in any number of projects online without having to make a big commitment or even leaving the comfort of your home. There are projects popping up every day, one to suit every interest. You can transcribe historic menus from the New York Public Library. You can count craters on NASA's Be a Martian program. You can sequence DNA in an online game called Philo. I tried it, I couldn't figure it out. You can transcribe the writing of philosopher Jeremy Bentham, again, kind of difficult. You can contribute to articles and editing on Wikipedia. There's even a squirrel counting project that you can get involved in. At the National Archives, we know that people want to participate in our mission. We see it every day on Flickr, where folks tag our historical photos, making them more accessible with every tag. We also see it on our blogs, on Facebook, and on Twitter. Soon we will add the ability to tag in our own online catalog, and we hope to launch a mobile app that will allow researchers to take a picture of records they are researching and upload them to our catalog. Our working title for this app is called the Pocket Archivist. We wanted to host today's program so that we could learn about the innovative crowdsourcing projects happening at other institutions. We want to learn what's working and what's not, and also what's coming in the future for online participation. We have with us today 3 leaders in online crowdsourcing projects. They have each developed ways of harnessing the willingness and enthusiasm of volunteers online. Darla Adams is the Senior Director of Ancestry.com's World Archives Project. She has been with Ancestry.com for 6 years as a project manager for several programs, including member services, community education, and content teams. The last 4 years, she has focused on implementing and managing the World Archives Project, a collaborative community effort that has allowed thousands of people around the world help preserve historical documents. Matt Knudsen is the geospatial librarian of the Map Division at the New York Public Library. For close to 10 years, he has been responsible for managing the reading room, staff, physical collections, and digital activities. Drawing on his background as a cartographer, artist, and inspired by the current practices in the fields of archaeology, geography, and geographic information systems, he is pushing the migration of the map collections into the digital world and developing new location-based historical research methodologies. Jessica Zelt has spent the past 3 years reviving the North American Bird Phenology Program, the oldest bird monitoring program in the country, which began 120 years ago. The program currently houses 6 million records that document bird migration arrival and departure times from around North America. This unparalleled resource will help in understanding the scale of global climate change and how it is affecting bird populations across the country. Jessica has worked for the Colorado State University, the Conservancy of Southwest Florida, and the Smithsonian's Migratory Bird Center on various research projects. Each of our panelists today will give a short presentation about their crowdsourcing program, and then I'll start the discussion and we'll open it up for question and answers. Darla, would you like to go first?
Thank you. Welcome, everybody. Let me just get this opened up here. First, before we get started, Ancestry.com's mission is to help everyone be able to discover and learn about their family history. And so we looked at one of the things, the way we do this is being able to put more records and documents digitally online for people to be able to find those. We call this content. And so we look at the content and we say, how can we get more content online for people? And then how can we capitalize upon the community effort to be able to help us do that? And this is how we came up with the World Archives Project. But I want to show you a video that helps to give you our vision of what the World Archives Project is. It also gives you a little snippet of the process and how World Archives plays a part in getting content digitized and put online for everybody to access. Do you want to roll the video?
Records are created when important things happen in individuals' lives. They capture a particular moment that means something special.
The course of your life takes you through the military, through school, through employment. In each of these steps along the way, there are documents that are created. They describe times that you weren't a part of, but you can feel a part of.
Those records capture forever, really, those moments in a person's history. We all leave a legacy, and these records that we're preserving speak to that legacy. These stories tell us who we are and what we're about. The World Archives Project is simply about keeping those stories alive.
These records may be the only thing that remains about a person's life. It may be the only thing that tells the impact that they made on their families or made in history.
These historical records are actually in a lot of danger. We've had earthquakes, fires, floods. Katrina, of course, destroyed a lot of records in the southern part of the U.S. We've also had earthquakes in Italy and Cologne, Germany. Third largest archive in Germany just collapsed one day.
I've seen records that have been exposed to the elements, open windows with sea breeze blowing through, sitting on top of old toilets, archives drenched with water, with sewage.
Multicolor mold that is unearthly.
Worms had, over the years, eaten through page after page from the cover, the front cover to the back cover.
Over time, the records deteriorate naturally, no matter what the best archives can do.
Without work and without resources, the records that are currently in archives around the world will slowly deteriorate. Many of them are deteriorating right now.
Preserving records starts with dealing with the archive. We have a lot of partnerships throughout the world with some great record institutions, record custodians. We make agreements with them to digitize and preserve their records.
At that point, we then digitize those records using digital cameras and make digital copies of those that can then be sent out across the world for the World Archives community to take part in the transcription or the indexing of those records. Once that transcription has been processed, it's available on the website for the whole world to use in their research.
Without the help of the contributors to the World Archives Project, we wouldn't be able to make nearly as many records available.
They see this as an opportunity to use their discretionary time in putting towards something that benefits people as a whole, and not just for them here and now, but perhaps generations to come.
I just feel so excited about the next batch of records that are coming out. What's going to be found in those? What kind of stories are going to be revealed? Who's going to get past their brick walls? And maybe even which records am I going to find about my own ancestors?
If I key 100 records, then potentially that helps 100 people be able to find an ancestor. And if 100 other people key 100 records, then there's over 10,000 records or 10,000 names that someone can find online.
If one person makes one meaningful discovery, it's all been worth it.
So who is this community that works with us on the World Archives Project? They're a community of interest, meaning that they have a passion or a goal that's the same. And in this case, their passion is family history or getting more records online for free. And they're also a community of purpose in that they work with tools or a same type of processes in order to achieve this goal. And in this case with Ancestry, it's our keying tool that they are working with and the other tools we provide to them to be able to achieve and accomplish the goal that they have. And it's a community of practice, a community that is able to take, that through these tools they have a social aspect that comes out of what they're doing, as well as a culture that comes from this community interacting and achieving towards this same purpose that's here. Just to give you an idea of what this community has accomplished, we started doing the World Archives Project. We did our beta in June of 2008, and then we opened it up to the public, to the broader public in March of 2009. So really for 3 years they've been working. We have over 82,000 contributors, and they're spread across 130 countries throughout the world. Obviously the largest is in the United States, but we have contributors all throughout the world helping us. This group has keyed, or what we call indexed, is to transcribe over 90.2 million records in that 3-year period. And just to give you an idea of the hours that they put in doing this transcription, they've put in over 1.4 million hours, which is pretty amazing, of their own time. We have some of our what we call super keyers who put in 8 hours a day just keying. They love it. They just love doing something that they feel is beneficial to other people and doing something that they have a passion for. They have completed 96 projects, which is collections, different collections that we have keyed and indexed that are either online or in the process of being online. And the indexes are free to everyone. They're free to the public. Just to give you an idea of how it works, they download a keying tool that we put together, some software that is proprietary to Ancestry, And they download batches of images from different collections that give them maybe 10 different images, 7 to 10 images to look at. It takes typically 20 minutes or so to key a batch. And they take the information from that image and key it into fields that we identify. And we call it an index because we're asking them just to key fields that will help it become searchable online. We're not transcribing the entire document, just the fields, names, dates, places that help it become searchable. And then we provide helps within the tool as well as online to help them in knowing how to key the project, what to do, answer questions. Some of those helps include a wiki project page. So we put information about each project into a wiki and some basic helps, sample images, and helps of how to key certain fields. And then we leave it open to the public to also go in and they can add things to the wiki and continue to give each other help on how to key these projects. And we provide them feedback, so in the process they key it as well as do a quality check on the documents that they're doing. And we'll provide them feedback as to what are kind of the common errors that we're finding when we do these documents, so that people who are keying can work on those and be able to improve their accuracy. And we also provide stats to the individual as well as statistics about the project of where it's at and how it's being worked on. And we use the discussion feature within the wiki to let them ask questions of each other and to help one another and answer those questions. We also have a blog that we do that this is used primarily to provide information to the community from Ancestry about new projects, about any kind of major questions that seem to come up. If everyone seems to see a lot of chatter about an issue, then we will address that issue through the blogs, and then we get a lot of discussion on that. We have message boards that's quite active. They share their own interests, their own stories, things that they're finding in these documents that they find interesting to look at. We had one particular one that was based on deaths and the different types of deaths and kind of the circumstances behind those, and very interesting for the community. We have Facebook. We have a Facebook page that the community follows on. This community is average age between 45 to 60 plus. I like to think I'm in the younger bracket of that age group. That entire age group uses Facebook and loves it and communicates through Facebook and several of these mediums. And we use Twitter. The main purpose that we use Twitter is through some of our rewards and recognition programs, and I'll explain that in a moment. Some of the things we do, you have to remember this community is a very altruistic community. They are doing this because of their love for family history and the desire to have more records online free to the public. And they're a little shy when we try to highlight them. And so we put things out there about who are the top contributors for those projects or for overall who's been keying a number of records. And then we do some promotions, what we call our World Record Challenge, where we provide weekly, or sometimes it just depends on when we want to do the promotion, and of how many keyed records on this particular project, and we'll reward them with Ancestry products like a free family tree maker or a DNA test or a free subscription depending on the promotion that we're doing. We've also provided money grants where Ancestry will donate money to societies or historical societies, genealogical or historical, in behalf of a keyer who won a prize. And we just recently did that where we gave money grants to 5 different societies based on some of the work that the keyers had done. And we have virtual keying parties. This is where we use Twitter. We'll pick a time in the day and we'll just put that out there to the community to say we're going to, everybody who can key during these next 2 hours, let's see how many records we can get. And people will get on and start keying. They use Twitter to chat back and forth and to share information and ask questions. And then we do milestone thank yous for people who've reached various milestones. Sometimes we have a newsletter, so we'll spotlight different keyers in the newsletter. We also have partners that we work with. Obviously, the National Archives is one of our largest partners when it comes to providing content. And content, again, is the records and the documents. And over about 30 of the projects we have done in the last 3 years have come from the National Archives, and we have several more in our pipeline that we're building up that will come from the National Archives. We also have some partners who also provide content, as well as providing promotions to get the public to come and key the records. And you may have heard of one of the most recent with the United States Holocaust Memorial Museum, where we're doing the World Memory Project. very similar, and it's focusing on indexing documents about victims and survivors of the Holocaust so that those indexes can be online and open and free to the public. Then we have several genealogical and historical societies who have partnered with us in promoting the World Archives Project within their society organizations and encouraging people to come and key these documents. Just to give you an idea of who this community is, and I thought I'd give you a couple quotes that came from them. This is from Leanne. I just keyed my first records last night. My husband thinks I'm crazy, with a full-time job and 2 small kids, but I am hooked. So in my spare time, I'm building my family tree, helping other people find theirs by working on AWAP, which is short for the World Archives Project. This is addictive to many of these people. The next one, this is probably one of my favorite. I replaced Sudoku in this man's life. I used to play Sudoku online every day until I discovered AWAP. Now I'm getting the same relaxation and contributing to online records, from Tom. And finally, this is a recent one from Janine, who came and joined us through the World Memory Project. I'm so glad that I can spend some time contributing to the USHMM project. I have friends whose parents watched as family and friends were taken by the Nazis. For them and for all of us, thank you for giving me the chance to share in the conservation of their history. This is a project that the community really feels passionate about. And to give you a sense and an idea of that passion, I'll close with a final video that gives you an idea as to why they actually spend the amount of time and hours they spend doing these projects.
So thanks everybody who are responsible for putting this program together. This is really wonderful. That was really an excellent presentation, Darla. Thank you. So my name is Matt Knudsen. I'm the geospatial librarian at the New York Public Library. I'm going to zip right through this presentation and hopefully enlighten you as to some of the what I find more interesting activities that we have going on at the MAP division of the New York Public Library. So just by way of introduction, I work here in this delightful room, the Lionel Pincus and Princess Ferial Map Division. You should all come and visit. David can tell you it's a spectacular jewel box of a room, open to the public with Wi-Fi and power on the tables and everything. It's a really great place for research. So a little bit about our collections before I get into crowdsourcing. We have 433,000 sheet maps, 25,000 books and atlases, 13,000 plus and growing digital maps. These are maps that we've digitized as a part of the overall project to digitize a lot of the image-based materials at the New York Public Library. The collection spans from the global to the local, from the antiquarian to the contemporary, everything in between. It's a fabulous collection of maps. Our antiquarian maps go back to the late 15th century. We have thousands of sheets, hundreds of atlases, and they're all open to the public. They're all readily accessible. Topographic maps, more than 200,000 sheets. We're a federal depository library, so we maintain those for use by the public. Property maps, and this is really where the bread and butter of our collection is. These maps approach architectural scale. We have tens of thousands of sheets of these covering New York City. And as you can imagine, New York City is our primary concern. We have, that's where the sort of the critical mass of materials in the map collection are, and they are by far the most heavily used. And as you can see, these include things like fire insurance maps. And the background image here is one of those fire insurance atlases from an 1868 Williamsburg in Brooklyn. This also includes sheet maps covering all the boroughs, zoning maps, historical zoning maps, farm maps, historical topographic maps, and nautical charts. So who uses these things? I'm not going to go through the trouble of reading all of these readers to you, but there are a wide array, let's just say a wide array of people that I lump into this general category of being people who are spatial historians or spatialists. This includes people in the arts, this includes people in the sciences, this includes humanities professionals, historians, urban planners, architects, and so on and so on and so on. Think about it this way. They're primarily people who are curious about peeling back layers of geography as they're expressed on maps in order to study what a landscape was like, right? To tell the story of a place. And there's so many of the stories that you were talking about, Darla, encoded in these maps. And the geographic information is the sort of the thing that can help us express and tell those stories. Okay, so new ways of meeting our new user expectations, which, as we all know, everybody wants everything online. So we start by digitizing. Again, a whole bunch of projects over the course of the last 10 years, the most recent of which we're digitizing 7,200 Sanborn maps, and these are from the Sanborn Map Company. By far the most detailed maps we have of the city. We have funding from the National Endowment for the Humanities to do just that. And I'll talk about those maps in a second. I can talk about them at great length because they're just so wonderful. And here's a note about the newly digitized maps. These things have an incredible amount of information. But one of the most important pieces in there are their geographic keys. I just call them the geographic keys. These things have street addresses, and they have historical street addresses. And this is of vital importance to people doing research on family history, or people doing research on industrial history. Like, let's say you had a street directory from New York City from 1786, or a little bit later, let's say it coincided with this map from 1922, and you had a street directory that told you that there were bakers in this particular building, and there were shoemakers next door, and there was a Chinese laundry downstairs, and it was zoned in this particular way and that particular way. The geography provides the key to unlock all of that other kind of information. And I'm going to show you how we're actually doing that, and how we're reaching out to the new publics and old publics alike to help us do that. You can see the kind of stuff that appears on here. It's quite incredible. Skylights, what they're used for, cornices, boilers, firewalls, number of windows and openings, the number of stories. They're quite extensive. In 1916, there's even an indicator as to if something is a saloon or not. These tell you if these are mixed-use buildings. You can infer all sorts of other great information about who lived there, what it was like to live there. Is there a store down below? Is it a single-family brownstone? Is it a one-story wooden shack dwelling? And so on and so on. So other ways of meeting new user expectations. These are sort of coming on the heels of these big questions that libraries and archives alike are asking themselves. So once we digitize stuff, what do we do then? How can we add value to these collections? How can we make these, and this is my question, my burning question, how can we make these maps more useful to our readers? How can our readers help us make these maps more useful? And one solution was to come up with a web-based, user-driven georectification toolkit called maps.nypl.org, which we started in 2008. And what this does is, first of all, provides a parallel database of all of the maps that we've digitized. You can see right here. It allows users from the outside to create an account. We have about 1,300 users to date. And then it allows you to do what we call map warping or map rectification. So you can see these two maps. One, the historical map on the left, and this is OpenStreetMap. This is an open database of map information of the whole world. So what we're asking users to do here is create points of equivalency between pixels on a map and between geographic locations on the Earth, right? So they're using their knowledge of geography to find points in common, right? And then create a table and create a new derivative copy of a map. So you can see this is the earliest version of a fire insurance map for Lower Manhattan. This is William Paris's 1852 map of the area down straddling Broad Street in Lower Manhattan. And this map has been georectified and cropped. And it's far more useful than it was before because it's been aligned to geography. History, historical landscape has been aligned with contemporary landscape. Okay? And so through this process, we can also do things like cropping an entire atlas and making a new thing out of it. This is entirely new. So an atlas is something that's linear. You can flip through it page by page by page, but that doesn't really make sense in the context of geography. This makes a lot more sense. This is one atlas, 123 sheets, all the way up to 72nd Street, all composited and mosaicked into one bit. And you can see we can do wonderful sort of things because this is interoperable. This pushes out of our database as what's called KML. This is keyhole markup language, and you can render it in Google Earth quite quickly, quite easily. We're right now building a mobile app too, so you can go to anywhere on the street and pull up historical information, historical map information about where you are, and then flip through time, peel back the layers of historical geography. This is also very useful for people. For those of you that are geo-nerds, this is a web map service, and you can plug this right into a geographic information system and do all sorts of highly useful, very interesting things with that. And then we eventually will provide a GeoTIFF once we iron out the policy about giving away all of our stuff, which we're very excited about too. Okay, so you can do things like create a geographic flipbook. Okay, so there's LaGuardia Place in Google Earth in 2011. There's Bernard Ratzer's 1776 map of the same area, and it's a little bit hard to see, but you can see these outlines are farms. So LaGuardia Place in New York was farms in 1776. You can see certain things which persist, like the Bowery up here is called the Bowery because we have boughs and we have orchards along the sides. So that's an indicator. We're always harping on the fact that geography is persistent. Some of it is. The rest of it's fluid, so certain things will make their presence known through the course of history, and other things will fade away. And maps are wonderful ways of recording a snapshot in time of someone's representation of geography at a time. So here's the same place on that earlier fire insurance map. It's now called Lawrence Street. And then there's another handwritten notation. It's Amity Street. This street goes through multiple iterations of place name changes, street name changes. These are valuable decoders of that street information. So if you had a bunch of records, maybe from Ancestry, that were related to Amity Street or to Lawrence Street, and you tried to geocode them using Google Maps, forget it. There's no way you can make a relationship between an old document about a particular place that doesn't have that same name until you build a data structure to do just that. So you can see here's 1916, George Washington Bromley, his map, and you can't really see it down here, but down here it says Y, and that's West Broadway. It's West Broadway at that point. At a certain point, Fifth Avenue, it becomes Lower Fifth Avenue at another point. So it has 5 different street names for the same place. And you can see, here we are, LaGuardia Place, as represented in Google Earth in 2011. So another thing that you can do with this tool, it's a georectification tool, so you can stretch maps. You can also transcribe information off of these. And this is another thing which is highly labor intensive. So you think 13,000 maps, and these are building level detail maps. Each one of these has upwards of about 500 or 600 buildings on them with building codes that tell you about what they're made of, about what the street address is, about various different things. Its use, is it mixed use, is it a single family home, and so on and so on and so on. We're asking users to transcribe this information, and then it can be exported into all of these wonderful formats. A lot of these are non-proprietary, open supported spatial information formats. So you can pull these down as a comma delimited file, a KML file, or a shape file, which is also useful for geographers using GIS, Geographic Information System software. So this is the way, the means by which we are allowing users to come in on the outside, enabling scholarship to happen whereby geographic information can be mashed up with other textual information about geography. Okay, and that's the critical piece. This is the framework by which that can happen. Okay, so another thing that we've done to continue to meet user expectation is we built these tools, and then we applied and were funded by the NIH to run a whole bunch of our collection through this tool set. We hired a superpower user to do a whole bunch of this work. We initially digitized 7,200 public domain maps of New York City. This is the rest of what we have in our collection about New York City, so all of those maps will be available. We're geo-rectifying a subset of 2,000 of those maps, and primarily that work is happening by one person who was hired and her efforts as a community organizer type person to corral different groups of interns and volunteers to do this work. This is one of the ways that we understand this is a complex tool, and we needed to have somebody in place to be that crowd manager. And we can talk about that in a second too. I'm assuming we're going to be doing that. And then the last part of this project is to trace 1,000 of these maps of all of their building structures, and then produce these as data for anybody to use. Okay, so what do we do with this stuff? We've engaged the public in many different kinds of ways. We blog about this work on our website. We hold what are called citizen cartography workshops. Here's one right here. These are really nice ways to instruct the public because it's a complex tool. This is a necessity until we make the tools easier to work with, that is. We engage social media through the various different channels that the library has opened up. We have a Twitter account, we have a Facebook account, and we talk about these different events. We announce them. We call people we call on the public to help us with a particular atlas or a particular plate on a particular day, and so on and so on. And then the library also is, the NYPL is hosting things like this here, and a Social Media Week presentation. We did a nice panel discussion on what this all means for the future of information at the NYPL, the future of geographic information, the future of social media as it meets geography and geographic information. We evangelize all over the place. This is just a couple of snapshots of different places where we've taken basically a road show and are working to develop a set of relationships and collaborations with different universities and groups such as the British Cartographic Society here and the Bard Graduate Center for Material Culture and what's that last one? This is an AIA program about mapping the cityscape. So we're engaging different professional groups who care about spatial information, like architects, like people studying material culture, and so on and so forth. So this is our process of sort of building a field of co-conspirators. So we cultivate collaboration both internally and externally as well. This is sort of more of the same. We've had a lot of really fun success with different groups, like a group of Middlebury College historical geography students who created an atlas, 19th century atlas of New York City out of our materials using these tools. We've been involved in the spatial humanities through the University of Virginia Scholars Lab, and that's, again, the development of a community around the practice of enabling and working with spatial information for the study of the humanities. With that, I know we're going to probably hold questions and comments till later, so you can ask them then. We have a lot of work to do ahead of us, but we're excited to figure out how better engage the public and to scale these processes by making what the public does a lot easier. So, thank you.
Hi, everyone. I am a biologist and program coordinator of the North American Bird Phenology Program. This program is based around a collection of 6 million bird migration records, which record arrival and departure dates for over 870 species across North America. And what we're doing with these records is we're scanning each of them in, and we're putting the image of the record online. Let's see, is this a pointer? Yeah. So we're putting each of the records online, where we then ask volunteers to sign up with the program, transcribe each record, and then that information goes into a database which we're making publicly accessible for the public and researchers and policymakers. So this program started back in the 1880s by a man named Wells Woodbridge Cook. He became really interested in ornithology at a young age. When he was 12 years old, he was given his first gun as a birthday present, and this was a really big moment for Wells because it meant that he got to go outside and actually get in much closer contact with some of the animals that he was so interested in. So he was known in his community to go out and take specimens of birds. This is kind of an odd idea for us to think about now, but before people had field guides, And binoculars, guns were the way that people got closer to the environment and learned about different animals. So Wells later in his 20s moved to the Mississippi Valley. He became a teacher there and decided to take his hobby and turn it into a research project. So he asked his friends and colleagues to start recording these arrival and departure dates for any species they saw around their homes or communities. And only about 20 observers contributed to the records for the first 2 years. It was then that the American Ornithologists Union was starting up and decided to sponsor his program. They thought it was pretty interesting. And so they ran it for just a year because within a year it had already outgrown the capacity that the AOU could sponsor. And it later moved to the Division of Economic Ornithology with a well-known biologist by the name of C. Hart Merriam. It was with Merriam that the program grew to its height of 3,000 observers. And you can take a look here at this map. This is a random selection of 85,000 records. The location to where the observations were made on these records were mapped, and this gives you an idea of where the observers were living. So this is a typical look at the records that we're working with. All three of these records actually record the same information, but they're in different forms due to different people who are running the program back at different points. But they all include the name of the bird, which can be in a common name, a scientific name, or an AOU number, the location to where the observation was made, the observer, and then down here are dates of observation. So there's usually a first seen, next seen, became common, and last seen date. And it's actually the same up here. Over here is an AOU number for purple finch. This is the location and the observer name, and this is a first seen date. This is an F, 5/4 in 1924. And over here, this one was actually recorded by Wells Cook. He got the record and then transcribed it. But this is the location, the observer name, the AOU number for the species, and then again, this is an F. This is a first seen date, next seen became common, and this was in 1907. So when you're first starting to look at this, it kind of looks like, just chicken scratch, but over time, with some training, you learn how to read these records. So the program ran for 90 years. There were only 4 coordinators who worked with these records. Wells Cook, of course, who really worked with these records his entire life until he died suddenly of pneumonia in 1917. Because he did die suddenly, his friend H.C. Oberhauser, who was a biologist with the federal government, decided to continue this program along with May Thatcher Cook, who was Wells' daughter. And she was also one of the first female biologists of her time. Fred Lincoln then took over the program, and he was simultaneously running and creating the bird banding lab, and then later passed on to Chan Robbins, who ran the program for about 15 years. Chan is a biologist with the USGS, and he's been working for 60 years. He retired on his 60th, but continues to work at Patuxent. And he's the one that decided to close the program in 1970. The reason he did this was, one, because he was starting up the North American Breeding Bird Survey, but also because the reason that these records were originally recorded were to learn about the migration and distribution of birds. Back in 1880, that wasn't known, and through a large part of these records, that became known, and so by 1970, it was no longer needed to record the records, and Chan decided in 1970 was the year to stop. So during the 90-year span that this program ran, there were pretty much any notable scientist or researcher of that time contributed to these records. And a big draw for people getting involved with the program now is that they get to work with some of the original records of people that they've only read about in books. So they get to go on and see these people's records and actually do the transcription. But there were many just ordinary citizen scientists who also contributed records to this collection. So the program came to a close in 1970, but over that time span, there were 6 million records that were collected. You can think of this collection of records as a physical database of pretty much everything that was known about bird migration between 1880 and 1970. So it records pretty much everything. The bird phenology program, we're interested in the original records, but there's also publications, breeding, nest and egg records, and also field reports by scientists who are making observations in the field and then later sending them in. We also contain records of extinct species, exotic species that were just coming to the US and spreading, and also just rare records. The records themselves went to creating the American Ornithologists Union's checklist of North American birds and some of the first field guides. But in 1970, the program closed. All these records were, and the file cabinets, 52 of them were moved into storage, and they stayed there for 40 years. They were put in leaky attics, moldy basements, storage facilities. They were moved around several times and almost lost. It was really only because sometimes Chan Robbins would physically stand in front of the records and refuse that they couldn't throw these records out. They weren't too important. That was pretty much the only reason these records weren't destroyed. So it's really thanks to him that we still have these. So it wasn't until my supervisor, Sam Droege, made a link between these records and phenology that interest was sparked in these records again. Phenology being the timing of life cycle events for plants and animals. So what we're interested in is taking these historic arrival and departure dates of migratory birds and comparing them to recent arrival and departure dates, also with climate data, and looking at how climate change has affected these dates over time. So in 2009, Sam Droege was able to get a small amount of funding to hire a program coordinator and a few scanners, and we started creating this program. It's important to note that I am the only paid employee that works with this program. Everybody else is working on a volunteer basis. So there's a lot that you can do with just will of people and the interest from the public. So the program's goals were to create a digital format for this large data set, to then create a network of volunteers and maintain those volunteers who would transcribe these records and make them accessible. Then to make the data publicly accessible for policymakers, the researchers, and of course the public who took so much time to transcribe the records. And lastly, to develop a contemporary end to this program so that people were going outside their homes and collecting contemporary data of arrival and departure dates and submitting them. So this gives you a look of the transcription page that people spend hours a day looking at. You can see the card here, and they transcribe the card into the available fields. So they have a couple different options. They can skip the card if they don't like it. They can rotate the card if there's any kind of a problem during the scanning process. They can ask for help, which is an FAQ sheet or a link to resources. Also really important, they have this button here called My Stats. This is really important for the people who volunteer with us. When they click that, they can see the number of cards they've transcribed in the session they're signed into, the number of cards they've transcribed since they signed up with the program, how many cards everyone's transcribed that's contributing to transcribing the records, and then how many are left to be transcribed. They can also do a filter here if they just want to transcribe a certain species or a certain location. They can use those filters, and the filters are created through the scanning process. Each card's scanned in with metadata of species and location, which allows it to be searchable later. And they can also put in their comments here if there's any kind of problem with the card or anything that they wanted to note with the card that gets added on to the transcription and sent into the database. So this is the way that the transcription page works. We have the card up here. Two different people always transcribe the card. If the card matches, it's sent into the database, and if it doesn't match, it's sent back into the system for a third transcription. Again, if 2 out of the 3 transcriptions match, it's sent into the database. If the card still doesn't match, it's sent into something called a rectification system, which we're currently developing, where you'll see the multiple transcriptions people have done along with the image of the card And for the people who are using this system in the office, they can actually pull the physical card, make a final decision on how this card should be transcribed, and send the information into the database. So we have about just over 2,000 volunteers who are working with this program, and about 500,000 records that have been transcribed so far, and that's been in about 3 years. This program is really easy that people can transcribe from anywhere, from their homes, from work. I even have a couple people who transcribe while they're bird banding in the field. They'll do it on their iPhone. So we have just about 1,100,000 records that have been scanned that are available online, and about 500,000 cards that have been transcribed through this system, and a little over 2,000 volunteers. So what I'm really excited to announce is that just recently we were able to release 40,000 records to the public through our website, and these were cards that were transcribed multiple times and matched. So anyone can go into the website to the URL seen there and download the records that are available. And of course, this is going to be updated as the program develops. And just lastly, it's important to note that this program is a part of the larger USA National Phonology Network. The USA NPN is bringing together government organizations or government agencies, other organizations, educators, and the public to learn more about how climate change is affecting our nation's ecosystems. Thank you.
So Jessica just talked about quality control for her program, and I was wondering, Darla and Matt, if we could hear from you two what kind of quality control. This was an issue actually brought up on our Facebook page when we announced this program. We have concerned people that were saying, well, what about quality control? If someone transcribes it incorrectly, what kind of, or geotags it incorrectly, what kind of mechanisms do you have to ensure that that doesn't go out?
Sure. Well, for the Ancestry project, we do two different types. We do what we call an A-B arbitrate, or we do an A review. The A-B arbitrate, two different individuals will key the same image. And then we have an arbitrator, which is typically some of our super keyers who've been doing it for a long time, and their quality and their volume that they've done qualifies them to be invited to be an arbitrator. They will look at the differences, so if keyer A keyed a field just slightly different from what keyer B keyed, then the arbitrator will make a decision on either choosing what keyer A did or what keyer B did, and sometimes they may even say, no, I think it's neither, and put in what they think it is. The key review is very similar, only the person keys the entire document, and then the reviewer actually reviews every field, 100% review on every field to make sure that it was keyed 100%. And we do both. A lot of our documents right now are moving to the key review process, and the reason for that is we came to the decision as we looked over quality and what we had there, that really it depends on the last person that sees the document, what's the quality. Ancestry also has in place, because once the documents are indexed, it goes through a process of normalization and augmentation process within Ancestry to get it prepared to be connected with the image and put online. And so there are a few things that we do in that process to clean up certain things. So we're not as concerned if it's not 100%. So for example, if someone spells a name, our search tool has it in place so that it will bring up the multiple types of spellings of Sandy, for example. Someone may spell it S-A-N-D-Y, S-A-N-D-I. And so if on the document that Y may have looked like an I-E or something, and the keyer keys it that way, and the person searching for that person types in S-A-N-D-Y, we'll pull up both spelling versions. So there's some things we compensate for in that.
So on the map warper, each map that is georectified has what's called a root mean square error associated with it. It's a statistical term. I wouldn't be able to tell you much more than its name. but each map has a set of a root mean square error, and each one of the points that's used to correlate the historical map to the contemporary geography has a specific error rating. So all of these points that a user uses to correlate the map to the map are color-coded and have a number associated with them. So right now we have the good fortune and the bad fortune of having a fairly complex tool to work with. So that means that we don't have the volume that you have to deal with. We're certainly thinking out into the future that that we're going to engage the public and our super users to come and help moderate and figure out a more sort of robust validation process. But now what we have is one person whose responsibility it is to go through each map. It's fairly cut and dry when you see a map that's done wrong. You can see a huge number of red color-coded points and read the root mean square error. So right now it is essentially a manual process. But as we make the tools easier and as we scale our engagement processes, we certainly are going to move towards validation, a multiple user validation, one map versus the next map. And if the root mean square error on this one is off the charts with respect to the same map done by a different person, then we can see that. So right now, everybody's work is recorded. High root mean square error maps come up to the top, so it allows us to sort of sift through all of the work that's been done. But primarily, the work has been done by people that are closely associated with the library already. So either long-term volunteers, employees, former employees we're finding. A lot of people are really interested in making sure that this continues, which is exciting. So those are the primary things. In terms of keying information, and we really haven't scratched the surface of that yet, so there are similar methodologies that we look forward to implementing that will help us assure that this building is transcribed and within a certain threshold of rightness versus user B's, and then the keying of the text also will make sure to sort of compare and contrast what users are doing there. So, in a nutshell, yeah.
I'm curious how each of you articulate the value or return on investment of each of your projects. Are you primarily focused on cost savings, community building, furthering public education goals, providing greater access to your historical records, or in the case of the North American Bird Phenology Program, are your goals scientific? So maybe Jessica, you could start.
This one. We actually have several goals. One, in the end product, we're looking to, publish scientific data, but we're also interested in allowing citizen scientists to become, to contribute to a scientific study and feel that they're contributing and to create a community and a way to educate the public about climate change and phenology.
I think for us, there are multiple goals as well. I mean, for one, we're working to create a much more useful resource for our public. So this is going to sort of radically speed up the research process, which had typically been an analog, very long-term digging process where multiple cartographers over the course of history would put one particular place on a very different place in the map at a very different scale. So that's one of the goals, is to speed up the research process. And another one of the sort of long-term overarching goals would be to harvest a whole ton of geographic information with the eventuality that will then be integrated into one spatial and temporal database that can then be related in very interesting and very powerful ways to troves of other information. So the directories that I mentioned earlier, or much of what the work that Ancestry is doing. So building a spatial and temporal model of historical places and using crowdsourcing tools to feed that kind of a spatial temporal model. That's one of the goals. And engaging people, also engaging people's interest and their goodwill, and making it fun in the process. And then the sort of the flip side of that for the users themselves, the value proposition is that they then have access in new, interoperable, very interesting, very powerful kinds of ways to these collections. So they're doing a little bit of work, and the things that they're receiving in return are way better than they were before. So.
I think for Ancestry, as I explained, our goal and our focus is to get more content online. This gives us that opportunity to put more content online, and it adds to the product offering, yet it gives all these indexes are free to everybody. So like you said, that sweat equity that everybody puts in, they get back because it's free to them, and everybody wins from it.
Before we open it for questions from the audience, what does the future briefly look like for each of your projects? Are you going to incorporate more gaming, mobile, or social elements into your projects? Who'd like to start? Go ahead.
Sure. So I think our future is working with other partners who can help us bring more of that content, and with the community trying to make it more exciting for them and something that they want to interact with. And so we are looking at different opportunities with things that I don't know if it would be exactly gaming, but doing things that can help people maybe get a sampling of what they're doing using a game type of thing, so that they can feel comfortable with the indexing, and not necessarily turning it into a game feature, but using some of those features to introduce what they're doing and how they're doing the indexing.
For us, the future, as I mentioned before, I'm very intent on unpacking the different work processes in this fairly technical GIS process to the ends of making each one of those processes much simpler. So there's been a lot of research that shows that that the easier the task, the more people are likely to engage in it, and we think we can also insert some gaming mechanisms and some fun into that as well. So as opposed to the way it is now, where we have a split screen, users are putting points down, they're pushing multiple buttons to say commit this into the database and then warp the map. It's a fairly sort of long-term process with not a whole lot of immediate feedback. So one of the things that we're just toying around with and lessons that we're taking from the menus transcription project, which is happening and is having some wild success at the library right now. I wish I had prepared something to talk about that, but menus.nypl.org is very exciting and fun. One of the lessons learned there is that just a simple data transcription of maps is highly useful and contributes half of the piece of the puzzle of getting a map into a warped format. So let's imagine an old map with just a loop, a loop with an X in the middle, and you can just plunk it right down and name the thing, whether it's an intersection or it's a populated place or it's a stream, or whatever feature it is on that map. Just tapping into people's desire to point to the map and say, this is that, this is that, this is what that says, and to not be involved in a more long-term proposition, time-consuming. So that's one of the things, and then of course integrating things like leaderboards and reward systems, and a lot of what both of you have done so successfully in your respective projects, but working those angles to make sure that power users are recognized and power users are tapped to do more oversight and are rewarded for the work they're doing in more tangible kinds of ways. So that's kind of on the horizon for us. And then there's another proposition where we're actually are feeding, where we're building a proposal to build that spatial temporal database and throw a whole lot more newly digitized collections at those too. So that's on the horizon also.
So for us, our immediate goals are to start creating more visualizations. One of my priorities is really interacting with the volunteers that are spending this time transcribing the records, and I really want them to be able to understand the data that they're transcribing. So working on creating some new visualizations for our website, or that's my primary goal right now, as well as working on creating like an iPhone app, or ways that people can really take this the program anywhere with them. Because right now, they're kind of looking at just the main website, and it's not really made for an iPhone or an Android. So working on that. But long-term goals are, one, to move this into a contemporary program so that people can go outside and observe those same species, 870 species that we currently have in the records, and start creating a new database to house that. And also, part of the goal from the beginning with this program was to, see how this worked with a large data set, and if people would be interested in transcribing the records. And because of its success, we're looking to use this program as a template for other data sets and other programs, and helping other people develop similar programs to ours.
We can open it up for questions. If anyone has questions, there's microphones on either side. We can. Yes?
Hi. Historians and educators have a real concern that history is being lost. Digitizing documents in color. The color in documents is there for a reason. It's not just to make the document look pretty. And doing documents in black and white is like doing the Sanborn maps in black and white, like Michigan did several years ago. What is Ancestry doing to place the documents in their original format online?
So from a digitization process, they do try to digitize how they see the actual document, other than, like you saw in there, all the mold and things. So they have some technologies to help bring to surface what the document was, eliminating the mold and those types of pieces that create color to those documents that weren't meant to be there. But most of the documents that we do are either in black and white that we're doing, so, or they have more of that brownish tone to it. So.
Any other questions? Well, we are actually out of time, so it's a good thing you don't have any questions. I'd like to thank all of you for attending today, and if you're interested in future crowdsourcing projects that we have going on at the National Archives, I encourage you to follow on the narrations blog, which is available on archives.gov.